Hey guys, tonight we're stepping quietly into the shadowy world of feudal Japan, a place where your hair isn't just hair. No, tonight your top knot is your identity, your honor, your badge of courage. You can feel the cool night air brushing past your temples as you kneel, the weight of centuries resting on your shoulders, your newly oiled hair drawn tight and high atop your head. Each strand, each twist signals to the world who you are and what you stand for. And as you fidget ever so slightly beneath the gaze of your daimyo, one uncomfortable truth dawns on you. You probably wouldn't last a day with this much pressure resting in your hairline. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these sleepy journeys travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along a narrow gravel path, sandals crunching softly with every step, the dawn just beginning to tinge the horizon with a pale gold glow. Around you the world stirs. From the wooden homes comes the scent of rice steaming for breakfast and the faint clatter of chopsticks, but you aren't focused on food. Your fingers absent-mindedly graze the base of your top knot, reassuring yourself that the style holds firm after another night of sleep on your wooden pillow. That pillow, hard and flat, was designed precisely so your carefully arranged hair wouldn't collapse into chaos while you slept. Comfort. That's for peasants. The top knot or chonmage is more than a fashion statement, it's a declaration. The hair at your crown is shaved clean, while the remaining length is oiled and tied into a firm loop that arches forward atop your head. Historians still argue whether this style began primarily for helmet comfort or as a visual mark of samurai status. What we do know, it quickly became entwined with concepts of honor and loyalty, a visible sign of your dedication to Bushido, the way of the warrior. You're reminded of this every time you catch your reflection in a polished sword or the surface of a still pond. Imagine the very first samurai experimenting with this style. Some poor fellow probably got it wrong, too loose, too high, too lopsided. You wonder if his comrades stifled laughs before offering help, or if he was sent straight back to the barber in shame. And there's something else, those early top knots weren't just functional, they whispered messages about who you were. The precise angle of the knot, the gleam of the oiled hair, even the neatness of the shaved pate spoke volumes. Sloppy hair, sloppy warrior. As you walk, you notice other samurai emerging from their homes, adjusting the bands that secure their knots, offering each other polite nods, careful not to bump heads lest they disturb the perfection of their hair. In this society, a top knot isn't optional, it's expected. To appear in public with your knot untidy or worse, absent, is to invite ridicule or suspicion. People might assume you've lost a duel or been punished. There's even an old saying that a samurai without his top knot is like a bird without wings. And just like that, you find yourself instinctively checking your knot again. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows. The village is coming alive. You pass a small shrine, its wooden roof decorated with carvings of mythical beasts. Beneath it, offerings of rice and sake glint in the early light. You pause, bow your head, and feel the weight of tradition settle around you like a warm, heavy cloak. This top knot, this simple loop of hair, ties you not only to your peers, but to your ancestors. You're part of a lineage that stretches back generations, each warrior bound by duty, honor, and a very specific hairdo. What's fascinating and perhaps a little funny is that no one can quite agree on when the chonmage became truly standardized. Some records hint at Heian period origins, while others point to the Kamakura shogunate. Historians still argue whether the style evolved more for martial practicality or as a mark of elite status. And of course, as with all things samurai, what began as function soon transformed into art. You can almost hear an old master grumble about the young ones these days spending more time at the barber than on sword practice. There's a certain absurdity to it all. Here you are dressed for war, prepared to defend your lord's lands, and yet the morning's first priority is hair maintenance. You imagine some grizzled veteran grousing over tea about a battle lost because some upstart paused to fix his knot mid-fight. And yet beneath the humor lies truth. In this world, the top knot is serious business. As you make your way toward the training grounds, you spot an apprentice barber setting up his kit beneath a cherry tree. His combs, razors, and cloths are laid out with military precision. A line of young samurai-to-be waits their turn, each nervously smoothing their hair, eager to present themselves correctly. One poor lad's knot is slipping already, a single lock dangling traitorously down his neck. You watch him flush with embarrassment and can't help but smirk. Gently, you've been there. The air smells of fresh-cut wood and warm rice. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell chimes, marking the hour. Your day is about to begin in earnest. But first, you'll ensure that top knot is immaculate, because out here, it's as crucial as your blade. Your fingers linger at the base of your top knot as you step closer to the barber's apprentice, watching with quiet fascination as he handles the tools of the trade. Laid out before him on a clean mat are the implements that will determine whether your hair, your honor, really survives the day's scrutiny. A slim wooden comb carved so finely it looks fragile, though you know it's not. A small pot of camellia oil gleams in the morning sun, the surface like liquid gold. And beside it the razor, its blade, as precise and sharp as any katana, though far less likely to spill blood, hopefully. The apprentice bows respectfully, his own hair cropped in the humble style of his station. His movements are deliberate, almost meditative, as he dips a cloth into warm water, wringing it out just so before offering it to you. You take it, pressing it to your neck, feeling the heat loosen the tension beneath your skin. You sense the faint scent of pine smoke in the air from a nearby hearth. The day has only just begun, but already there's a kind of rhythm to it, a calm focus that comes with the slow, careful preparation of your top knot. Historians still argue whether samurai maintained these elaborate hair rituals daily or reserved the full treatment for special occasions. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. For now, as the apprentice oils the comb and begins to work through your hair, you understand why the care matters. The oil, smooth and faintly floral, tames stray strands and gives your knot its distinctive sheen. The comb glides through the hair, untangling, straightening, aligning every strand with the next. You close your eyes and listen to the soft scrape of wood against hair, the rhythmic swish of the apprentice's sleeve as he moves. And here's a funny thought that crosses your mind as you sit in modern times. People think of warriors as rugged, wild-haired figures, too busy fighting to fuss with grooming. Yet here you are, a samurai who spends as much time with comb and oil as with sword and armor. Somewhere a modern stylist would surely applaud your dedication. The tools of the samurai barber were more than functional. They were status symbols in their own right. A finely carved comb might be inlaid with mother of pearl, or etched with motifs of cranes or plum blossoms, symbols of longevity and resilience. Some barbers even kept charms tied to their kits, small paper talismans for steady hands or sharp blades. You spot one now dangling discreetly from the apprentice's belt, the ink characters faded, but still legible to those who know what to look for. The razor gleams as the apprentice lifts it, and you feel the cool slide of metal as he shaves the crown of your head. There's no room for error here. A slip could mar your appearance, or worse, your reputation. It's said that in some courts, a poorly done top knot could cost a barber his position. And you wonder, do modern barbers feel that same pressure styling hair under the intense gaze of their clients? Perhaps not. But here, under the rising sun of feudal Japan, every pass of the blade carries weight. You're reminded of a curious tidbit. Some samurai were said to carry their own small grooming kits on campaign, unwilling to leave their appearance to chance. These kits, compact and cleverly designed, contain many combs, a tiny oil flask, and sometimes even a mirror no larger than a coin. Historians still debate whether these were standard issue or personal affectations. of especially vain warriors. Either way, it's hard not to admire the dedication. You imagine pausing on a muddy battlefield to check your reflection in a drop of water, adjusting your knot before charging into combat. A little absurd, perhaps, but then honor is in the details. As the apprentice works, you catch sight of other samurai undergoing the same ritual. The training ground hums with quiet energy, the soft murmurs of men preparing for the day mingling with the rustle of robes and the occasional clink of weapons being checked. Everyone's top knot seems to glisten in the morning light, each one a small testament to discipline and pride. The apprentice steps back at last, offering a small hand mirror polished to a high shine. You tilt it to examine your reflection in the neat loop of your hair, arched just so the oiled strands catching the light, not a hair out of place. You nod your thanks and he bows, gathering his tools with the same care he used in his work. And then as you rise, a thought strikes you: if only all battles were this peaceful, this precise. If only the world could be kept in order with combs and camellia oil. You step away from the barber's apprentice, your top knot pristine and glistening under the morning sun, and head toward the bathhouse. The wooden structure stands at the edge of the training grounds, its roof tiles damp from the night's dew, thin trails of steam escaping through slatted windows. The scent of wet cedar and warm stone mingles with the faint tang of soap as you slide the door open and step inside. A soft hush falls over you, the kind that bathhouses always seem to carry a respectful quiet, as if the steam itself demands it. You ease out of your outer robe and move to a corner where a small wooden bucket and ladle wait. The water is warm, almost hot, and as you pour it slowly over your shoulders, you feel the tension melt away. But you're not here for relaxation alone. Note, this is part of the ritual. The bathhouse serves as the setting for refreshing not just the body but also your top knot, that ever-present marker of your status. Historians still argue whether the samurai bathed daily or followed a less frequent schedule based on rank or region. What's clear is that cleanliness was valued not just for health, but for the impression it gave. A greasy, unkempt top knot could hint at laziness or disrespect, a dangerous suggestion in a society where appearances spoke as loudly as deeds. You reach for a cloth and begin to dab carefully around the shaved crown of your head, mindful not to disturb the freshly tied knot. The goal here isn't to undo the barber's work, but to keep the scalp clean and the hair smooth. You catch sight of another samurai, older, perhaps wiser, pouring water over his own head with practiced care. His knot is looser, less polished, but still firm, a reminder that age tempers vanity, but not pride. And here's an amusing image that floats to mind. You imagine modern spa goers with cucumber slices on their eyes, face masks drying, comparing hair rituals with the samurai of old. Surely they'd find kindred spirits in the warriors who turned bathing and grooming into acts of discipline. As you settle into the shallow pool, the water lapping gently at your chest, you notice the fine tools hanging from a nearby peg, a small comb, a narrow brush, even a tiny pot of camellia oil sealed tight against moisture. The tools of hair maintenance follow you even here, a reminder that the top knot is never truly off duty. You think of the generations of samurai who've done exactly as you are, now their routines echoing yours down through the centuries. Somewhere beyond the bathhouse walls, you hear the soft ring of a temple bell, followed by the distant cry of a hawk. The world outside continues its bustle, but here in the humid hush of the bathhouse, time seems slower, thicker, like the steam curling around your face. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of cedar and soap, feeling the warmth seep into your bones. It's said that some samurai added herbal infusions to their bathwater, pine needles for clarity, citrus peels for energy, even fragrant petals for luck. Historians still debate whether these additions were practical or purely for pleasure. You imagine the faint swirl of petals at your feet and smile at the thought. Even the fiercest warriors, it seems, appreciate a bit of fragrance now and then. As you prepare to rise, you spot a young attendant quietly refilling buckets, careful not to disturb the peace. His own hair is cropped short, practical for his station, and he glances at your knot with what you fancy is a trace of envy. You nod politely a silent thank you for his unseen work and step from the water onto the cool stone floor. The air outside the bathhouse feels crisp against your damp skin, and you take a moment to adjust your robe fingers once again, brushing the loop of your top knot. Still in place, still perfect. The day stretches ahead, training duty, perhaps even a formal audience. And through it all, your top knot will remain a quiet, constant companion, a symbol of who you are and who you strive to be. You leave the bathhouse behind feeling refreshed and quietly confident that your top knot will endure the day's challenges. As you stroll toward the outer quarters, the morning sun, now higher in the sky, you spot a scene that warms your heart, a young apprentice kneeling beside his master, carefully parting the older samurai's hair with oiled fingers. The apprentice's tongue sticks out in concentration, his small hands trembling slightly as he applies the camellia oil, working it through each lock as though handling delicate silk. In the world of the samurai apprentices, sometimes sons, nephews, or low-ranking servants play a hidden but vital role in top-knot upkeep. It's a job that demands patience, precision, and above all, discretion. After all, no warrior wants his private rituals broadcast to the world. You pause at a respectful distance, watching as the boy folds the hair into the familiar loop and secures it with practiced care. His master doesn't move, save for a subtle tilt of the head now and then, guiding the apprentice with the wisdom of long habit. Historians still argue whether these grooming tasks were typically the domain of household retainers or shared among family members. What's agreed upon is that someone had to help, because tying a perfect top knot solo, especially one with the precise angles and balance expected of a samurai, bordered on the impossible. You reflect on your own mornings, on the steady hands that have helped you achieve that sleek, gleaming arc of hair, a silent teamwork, unspoken but essential. There is something quietly amusing about the seriousness with which these apprentices approach their task. You recall one clumsy assistant from your younger days who tied your knot so tight it gave you a headache all afternoon, or the time another tied it too loose and it began to sag, just as you bowed before a visiting lord. The memory makes you smile now, though at the time you wanted to vanish into the tatami mats. The tools of these young helpers are humble cloths for wiping the scalp, small combs for smoothing, strays bowls of warm water, and fingers made nimble through repetition. But their work is no less an art than the smithing of a blade or the painting of a scroll. There's even a kind of hierarchy to it. Those apprentices who master the art of the knot often go on to serve in more intimate, trusted household roles, their discretion and care rewarded over time. You step forward and nod politely to the apprentice and his master. The boy glances up, his eyes wide, then lowers them respectfully, returning to his work with renewed focus. The older samurai gives you a knowing look, the faintest glimmer of amusement in his gaze, as if to say, yes, we've all been through this. And in that shared understanding, you feel the quiet bond that ties all warriors together, not just in battle, but in these small daily acts of discipline. A breeze stirs the hem of your robe, carrying with it the scent of fresh-cut bamboo from somewhere nearby. The world outside your narrow focus returns birdsong, the clatter of wooden practice swords at the training yard, the murmur of servants beginning their chores, but in this moment it's the soft swish of comb through hair, and the gentle hum of apprentice and master that lingers in your ears, a reminder that even the fiercest warriors rely on unseen hands to help them maintain their honor. And as you move on, your own fingers brush your knot once again, still neat, still strong, thanks in no small part to those quiet, capable hands that work behind the scenes. You wander along a narrow garden path, now the gravel crunching beneath your sandals, as the memory of the apprentice's careful work fades into the gentle rustle of bamboo leaves. The sun climbs higher, and with it rises the soft heat that warms your scalp beneath the neatly tied top knot. And just as the apprentice's hands mattered, so too does what he applied, the curious concoctions of waxes, oils, and perfumes that kept a samurai's hair both practical and presentable. You pause beneath the shade of a maple tree, plucking a leaf between your fingers as you reflect on the substances used to tame and style that ever-important knot. Camellia oil, of course, the staple beloved for its soft sheen and light fragrance, so smooth it seems to glide through your fingers like silk. But there was more. Special hair waxes, sometimes mixed with beeswax resin, or even rare plant extracts, helped secure the knot's shape. The exact recipe varied from clan to clan, master to master. Some waxes held better in the humid summers, others were prized for their subtle scents, notes of plum, blossom, pine, or citrus that drifted gently on the breeze. Historians still argue whether these scented additions were purely for vanity or served as subtle signals of rank and refinement. What's certain is that the fragrances, light as they were, became part of the samurai's presence. Entering a room, a warrior might leave behind not just the echo of his sandals on the floorboards, but the faintest breath of pine or plum, a signature of sorts. You can't help but imagine modern hair product ads set in feudal Japan for the discerning warrior Camellia Supreme. Strong enough for a duel, soft enough for tea. The thought makes you smirk as you continue down the path, the leaf twirling between your fingers. There's a small stream ahead, its water clear and cool as it gurgles over smooth stones. You kneel beside it, dipping your hands in the refreshing flow. You picture samurai of centuries past doing just the same, their top knot secured for the day, pausing to savor a moment of calm before the chaos of duty resumed. And you're reminded of a quirky tidbit. Some samurai were said to carry tiny pouches of powdered incense that they discreetly sprinkle into their hair wax, ensuring that even in battle they smelled as composed as they looked. Whether this is fact or embellishment, historians still debate, but it certainly paints a vivid picture. As you rise, the breeze lifts your hair ever so slightly, and you catch the scent of your own camellia oil mingling with the freshness of the stream. The knot holds firm, the wax doing its quiet work. You move on, knowing that before the day ends, the wax may need touching up, the oils reapplied, because in this world the smallest details uphold the greatest honors. You leave the stream behind, the coolness of its water still clinging faintly to your fingertips, and make your way toward the armory. The scent of oil, leather, and polished steel greets you before you even step inside, mingling with the subtler fragrance of your camellia waxed top knot. Today you will don your armor, not just any set, but the full kabuto and domaru, the heavy protection that marks you as a samurai ready for battle or ceremony. And with that armor comes a quiet, familiar struggle, fitting your top knot beneath the helmet's rigid form without undoing all that careful work. Historians still argue whether the top-knot shaved crown began purely to ease the wearing of kabuto, or whether it first appeared as a mark of rank with the helmet adjustment coming after. Either way, you're reminded in this moment that function and form are deeply entwined. The loop of hair, so carefully tied and waxed, is designed to sit comfortably beneath the rounded interior of the helmet, the shaved patch at the crown preventing discomfort and slippage when the weight of iron presses down. You lift the kabuto, feeling its heft, and lower it gently onto your head. There's that slight, inevitable awkwardness as you shift and adjust, making sure the top knot nestles into place without being flattened or tugged. One hand beneath the rim, you give a final subtle twist to the knot, ensuring it aligns, just so avoiding pressure points that might lead to a headache, or worse, a crooked knot revealed the moment the helmet comes off. You can almost hear the teasing of your comrades if that were to happen. There's an amusing image that flickers through your mind. Modern athletes fussing over helmet hair before a big game. If only they knew the trials of the samurai, whose entire identity might hinge on how well his top knot survived beneath layers of armor. You smirk at the thought, adjusting the chin strap and feeling the familiar weight settle across your shoulders. Nearby, another warrior curses softly under his breath, struggling to get his own kabuto over a slightly too large knot. His apprentice hovers, offering quiet suggestions, while a more senior samurai watches, clearly amused. You're reminded that this particular challenge is universal no matter how seasoned you are. Helmets and hair rarely make easy companions. And here's a curious tidbit: some kabuto designs included small padded spaces or indentations specifically shaped to accommodate the Topknots loop. These subtle adaptations spoke to the armorer's understanding of both protection and presentation. A warrior needed to survive battle but also emerge with dignity intact. Historians still debate how common these modifications were, or whether they were reserved for high-ranking samurai with the luxury of custom-fitted gear. You give your helmet a final pat ensuring the alignment feels right, and join the line of warriors preparing for training. The clink of armor fills the air, a rhythm all its own, and beneath it, all unseen but ever present, your top knot remains a hidden anchor, tying you to tradition, to duty, and to the generations who have walked this path before you. The sun has climbed higher now, casting sharp shadows across the courtyard as you step away from the training ground. Your body warmed from practice, your armor dusted with fine grit. But beneath the kabuto, your thoughts are on the knot hidden from view. Still intact, you hope, still doing its silent duty. It's time to shed the helmet, to give your head and your hair a chance to breathe. You lift it carefully, feeling the familiar tug as it clears your top knot. A quick touch tells you not bad, the knot survived. You exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding. But now comes another test of endurance sleep, or rather the delicate dance of sleeping without ruining that carefully shaped loop of hair. You head toward your quarters, the air inside cool and dim, the faint scent of tatami mats mingling with wood smoke. In the corner waits an object, both friend and foe, to the weary samurai, the wooden headrest or takamakura. A simple block of polished wood, sometimes cushioned with a small folded cloth, designed to support your neck while keeping your top knot elevated and untouched through the night. Historians still argue whether every samurai truly used these nightly, or whether some found ways to adapt with softer pillows, sacrificing hair perfection for comfort. But tonight, as on most nights, you accept the hard compromise, settling onto your futon and easing your neck onto the support. The first moments are always the hardest. Your body craves softness, but your mind insists on discipline. After all, waking to a flattened knot would mean starting the ritual all over again come dawn. There's something faintly ridiculous about it if you're honest. Here you are, a warrior who has faced arrows, blades, and duels, and yet your greatest foe right now is gravity. You shift minutely, adjusting your head so that the knot floats above the pillow's edge. A breeze stirs the paper screens. Somewhere a night insect begins its song. You close your eyes, willing your body to stillness. You recall hearing of warriors who became so skilled at sleeping with their headrests that they could rest through the night without moving at all, waking with their hair as pristine as it was at dusk. Whether that's fact or legend, historians still debate, but you admire the idea of such control. Maybe one day you'll master it too. And here's a curious, almost comical image: a samurai on campaign headrest, packed alongside his blades and armor, determined to protect his top knot even in the field. You imagine the puzzled looks of foot soldiers as their lord sets up his sleeping arrangements with the same care as his battle plans. The night deepens. The headrest feels less foreign now, the weight of your head balanced just right, the knot untouched. Sleep begins to creep in slow and heavy as the sounds of the night wrap around you like a soft invisible quilt. And as you drift, you're quietly proud of this small victory. The knot holds. The honor holds. Morning's soft light filters through the paper screens, the air cool and fresh with the scent of damp earth. You stir slowly, the stiffness in your neck a reminder of the night's battle with the wooden headrest. And before even rising, your hand instinctively reaches for your top knot fingers, brushing the familiar loop. A sigh of relief escapes you. It is held. Another night, another quiet victory of discipline over discomfort. As you sit up and slide open the screens, the world outside hums with life. Gardeners tend to the gravel paths, sweeping them smooth. A pair of apprentices carry bundles of firewood toward the kitchen. A bird flits through the air, its song crisp and bright. And as you gaze at your reflection in a basin of water, you're reminded of something subtle but ever present, the seasonal shift reflected in your topknot. Historians still argue whether these seasonal adjustments to the chonmage were formalized rules or simply traditions that evolved through habit and preference. But the patterns are there. In the humid summers, the knots were often tied tighter, neater, to resist the weight of sweat and the pull of damp air. In the cooler months, there was room for slight softness, a touch of looseness that spoke to the slower rhythm of the season. And beyond the climate, your knot might signal changes in your role, ceremonial duties, court appointments, periods of mourning or celebration. You remember the first time you noticed the difference, a senior samurai's knot in winter, softer, the oiled hair shining beneath the pale sun like black lacquer. And in summer, that same warrior's knot drawn tight as a bowstring, every strand locked in place. There's an art to reading these subtle signs, and you find a quiet satisfaction in knowing them now. As you prepare for the day, you reach for the small box where your comb and oil rest. You adjust your knot ever so slightly, tightening the loop, adding a touch more oil to the ends. The scent of camellia mingles with the morning breeze, and you can't help but smirk at the thought of how much attention is lavished on what to an outsider might seem the simplest thing, a loop of hair. But for the samurai there is no small detail. The knot is more than style. It's signal, shield, and silent speech all at once. And as you step out into the garden, the day stretches ahead, a canvas of duty, discipline, and perhaps, if you're lucky, a moment of peace beneath a blooming plum tree. The garden path crunches softly beneath your feet as you walk toward the barber's quarters. The air smells of plum blossoms and fresh wood shavings, mingling with the faint trace of camellia oil lingering from your morning grooming. You pause at the low threshold of a small, tidy building where a master barber plies his trade, a man whose hands have shaped the knots of lords, warriors, and poets alike. Today you've come not for a fresh knot, but to observe, to listen, to absorb the wisdom that surrounds this humble yet revered art. The barber stands barefoot on the polished wooden floor tools laid out in precise rows, combs of boxwood and horn cloths as fine as silk razors honed so sharp they could shave a peach. His apprentice hovers nearby, watching with the intensity of a student studying for an imperial exam. The master gestures for you to sit, not as a client but as a guest, and begins to speak as he works on a waiting samurai. His voice is low, almost reverent, as he debates with his apprentice the subtle art of cutting samurai hair, where to shave closer for a cleaner line, how to balance the loop for symmetry, when to add a touch more wax for humidity's sake. Historians still argue whether barbers of old were seen as craftsmen or as minor artists in their own right. What's certain is that the barber's work bore consequences. A poorly cut knot might invite ridicule or, worse, suggest weakness in its wearer. You listen as the master recalls with a wry smile a time when a samurai challenged a rival over an insult delivered not in words, but in a glance at his slightly crooked topknot. Such was the weight these barbers bore with every stroke of the blade. There is something quietly humorous in the scene, a warrior of fierce repute sitting meekly as the barber inspects his head, like a jeweler appraising a gem. You imagine that in modern terms it's like a feared general fussing over the perfect tie knot before a battle. The thought almost makes you chuckle, but you stifle it out of respect. The barber pauses, gesturing to his apprentice to fetch a cloth. He wipes a single bead of sweat from the client's temple, part care, part ritual. The room smells faintly of hot steel, fresh oil, and the barest whiff of plum-scented wax. You feel as though you've stepped into a shrine of sorts, where hair, honor, and craftsmanship are the objects of devotion. When at last the samurai rises, not pristine and shining like polished lacquer, the barber bows low, his apprentice following suit. The client bows in return, gratitude unspoken but deeply felt, And as you rise to leave, the barber meets your gaze, eyes twinkling with the quiet pride of a man who knows that even the smallest art can shape the course of a warrior's day. The courtyard hums with quiet purpose as you step outside the barber's quarters, the early afternoon sun casting dappled light through the spreading branches of ancient pines. You pause near a water basin, its smooth surface broken only by a drifting blossom, and catch your reflection. The loop of your top knot sits proudly at its place, shining with fresh oil, the shaved crown neat as a scroll's clean margin. But as you gaze at your own image, you're reminded of something deeper, how this simple knot speaks volumes about who you are. Every samurai's top knot tells a silent story, and yours is no different. Its height, its symmetry, the way it catches the light, all subtle indicators of your rank, your age, your place in this tightly ordered world. The higher the knot, the closer to the heavens, or so the saying goes. For senior warriors, the knot might sit a fraction taller, the loop more pronounced, the oil's sheen just a little richer. For apprentices, smaller, humbler, a sign of their place on the long climb toward mastery. Historians still argue whether these visual codes were strict rules or customs that evolved organically over generations. What's clear is that anyone with a discerning eye could read a courtyard full of samurai at a glance, understanding who held power, who stood as guests, who served as hosts. You can't help but think of it as a language without words, a language of hair and wax of comb and blade. You adjust your knot slightly, fingers light and practiced. It's funny in a way, so much meaning all bound up in a loop of hair no wider than 2 fingers. And yet to appear before your lord with a crooked or sloppy knot would be unthinkable, an offense as grave as an untidy blade or a torn robe. You remember hearing of a young samurai who was refused entry to a formal audience because his knot sagged to one side. Whether it's a cautionary tale or truth, historians still debate, but you've never forgotten the lesson. Nearby, a group of younger warriors passed their knots, neat but modest heads held high as they exchanged formal greetings. One glances your way, offering the smallest nod of respect, recognizing your higher station in the subtle language of Topknots. You return the nod, feeling the quiet connection that threads through this society of warriors, each bound not just by sword and duty, but by a shared code written in hair. As you turn toward the training yard, the breeze lifts a few stray petals from the courtyard floor, setting them dancing through the air. Your top knot, secure and steadfast, does not waver, and in that small, silent victory, you find a moment of peace, a reminder that in this world of duty and discipline, even the smallest details matter. The afternoon deepens, shadows lengthening as the sun slides toward the horizon, and you make your way toward the edge of the estate, where the training fields give way to open grass. A group of samurai gathers there, their voices low, their movements tense. You pause, watching from beneath the branches of a gnarled pine, and catch the glint of steel as practice blades clash. But it's not the clash of weapons that draws your attention, it's the sudden, sharp intake of breath, the awkward shuffle as one warrior's top knot comes loose mid-duel. You wince on his behalf. The knot once tight and proud now sags pitifully to one side, a stray lock of hair clinging damply to his cheek. His opponent hesitates, caught between the instinct to press his advantage and the unspoken rule not to shame a fellow samurai by exploiting such a mishap. You see the fallen warrior's flush of embarrassment, the way he adjusts his stance, torn between fixing the knot or defending himself. Historians still argue whether such incidents were seen as mere accidents or as omens of dishonor. What's certain is that a duel interrupted by a failed top knot rarely ended without consequences. In some cases, the match might be called off the fallen hair, seen as a sign from the gods, or perhaps simply as a cue to reschedule and save face. You recall hearing a story, one of those passed around firesides, half truth, half warning, of a minor lord who challenged a rival after the man's careless glance at his disheveled knot. A glance, that was all it took. Swords were drawn and blood spilled over what was at its heart a bad hair day. Historians still debate whether the tale is fact or fiction, but the message is clear. In the world of the samurai, even hair could spark a duel. The dueling pair now lower their blades, an older warrior stepping between them, offering quiet words of counsel. The fallen samurai adjusts his knot as best he can, fingers fumbling in haste. You feel for him. How many times have you checked your own knot before stepping onto these fields, knowing how much rides on its perfection? There's a wry humor in it, isn't there? All that training, all that discipline, and yet the loop of hair atop your head might be the thing that undoes you in the eyes of your peers. You can't help but smirk as you turn away the incident, a reminder that in this world, pride and honor are tied up in the smallest things, and the smallest things can sometimes unravel at the worst possible moment. You leave the training fields behind the hum of low voices and the soft clatter of wooden practice swords fading into the distance. The air has cooled now, the light gentler, casting long golden streaks across the worn paths. Your feet carry you almost without thought toward a quieter part of the estate, a small garden where the widow's knot is still sometimes seen, a subtle, sorrowful variation of the samurai's top knot. Here, seated on a bench beneath a cherry tree, you spot an older woman, her hair arranged in that distinctive style. The top of her head is shaved as tradition dictates, but the knot is smaller, more restrained, tied low and tight as a silent symbol of mourning. It is a knot that speaks not of victory or duty, but of loss of a husband fallen in battle, or claimed by illness, of a life once shared now marked by absence. Historians still argue whether this widow's knot was strictly enforced, or whether it was a choice, a way for a woman to signal her grief to the world. Some sources suggest it served as protection, warding off unwanted suitors. Others believe it was a sign of continued loyalty, a way to honor the dead through daily ritual. Either way, you can feel the weight of its meaning as you bow respectfully, acknowledging the silent strength it represents. The woman does not meet your gaze. Widows in mourning often keep their eyes lowered, their presence meant to be felt, not to command attention. And yet the knot itself commands attention in its quiet way. You find yourself wondering at the skill required to tie it, just so the fingers that must have learned to work through tears, the discipline that grief demands. There is something almost unbearably human in the sight. You think of the samurai who once stood beside her, his own knot a proud loop shining in the sun, and now in his place this small tight coil of hair that whispers of his absence. It reminds you that for all the top knot represents honor, rank, pride, it is also a symbol of connection, of bonds that do not break even when the man is gone. And with that quiet thought, you turn from the garden, leaving the widow to her memories, the petals drifting around her like soft-spoken prayers. You make your way back toward the heart of the estate, following the soft clink of porcelain and the low murmur of voices. Soon you find yourself stepping onto the polished boards of a tea house veranda where a formal gathering is underway. The air is heavy with the scent of fresh matcha, the bitter green aroma mingling with that faint trace of camellia oil rising from your own top knot. Here every gesture, every breath, every hair matters. You bow low as you enter, sliding the door closed behind you. Inside, the host glides between guests, his movements precise and graceful, his top knot immaculate beneath the soft light filtering through rice paper screens. You settle onto the tatami mat, spine, straight hands resting lightly on your knees, aware of the knot at the crown of your head. It feels almost like a second spine, rigid, centered, demanding your attention even in stillness. Historians still argue whether the connection between tea ceremony and top knot etiquette was formalized by written rule or simply emerged from the shared reverence both arts demanded. What is certain is that an untidy knot at such a gathering would be seen as deeply disrespectful, an insult to the host, the guests, the ritual itself. Your appearance, as much as your words and movements, must reflect the harmony of the moment. The tea is served, the bowl warm in your hands, its surface smooth as river stone. You bow your head, careful that your top knot does not shift or lean, and take a slow, measured sip. The flavor is earthy deep, a reminder of the soil and rain that gave it life. And as you drink, you notice the small things, how the other samurai's knots glisten in the soft light, how the apprentice serving the tea bows so low his own cropped hair brushes the floor. There's a subtle humor in all this seriousness. You can't help but imagine a modern tea shop where customers fuss over their hair between sips, checking reflections in polished spoons. Here, though, no one dares touch their hair once the ceremony begins. The knot is set, the mask of discipline in place, and all focus turns outward to the tea, the host, the shared silence. A breeze stirs the paper screens carrying the scent of incense and fresh tatami. You close your eyes for a moment, savoring the peace. The tea ceremony, like the knot you wear, is a reminder in this world even the simplest acts are steeped in meaning, even the smallest details speak of who you are. The tea house fades behind you as you step once more into the garden, the air cooler, now touched with the first breath of evening. The path winds beneath flowering trees and along quiet ponds, but your mind lingers on something you overheard during the gathering, a hushed mention of forbidden top-knot styles, those daring shapes and twists that were at various times declared off-limits by decree or custom. You smile to yourself at the idea, a hairstyle so bold it could land a samurai in trouble, and yet it happened. There were moments in history when certain variations of the chonmage, too high, too elaborate, too suggestive of arrogance, were frowned upon, even outlawed. Historians still argue whether these bans were genuinely enforced or more a matter of polite society's disapproval, but the stories endure. You imagine a young samurai eager to impress, stepping into court with a top knot that arched just a little too proudly, the loop a touch too large, the oil shining perhaps too brightly. The sidelong glances, the raised brows, the murmured judgments behind folding fans. A risk as grave in its way as a poorly chosen word or an ill-timed gesture. Some variations were associated with rival factions, or regions, their shapes signaling allegiances better left unspoken. Others were simply seen as vain and insult to the humility expected of a true warrior. You recall an old tale, whether true or not. Historians still debate of a samurai who had his knot cut in public as punishment for defying the style edict of the local lord, a humiliation worse than exile, some said. There's humor in it too, how something as seemingly trivial as a twist of hair could stir such strong feelings. You picture modern fashion police transported back to feudal Japan, brandishing scrolls instead of tabloid covers, critiquing top knots instead of red carpet gowns. The thought makes you smirk as you continue along the path, the setting sun gilding the world in soft gold. And through it all, your own top knot remains precisely as it should be, neither too proud nor too plain. A quiet signal that you know the rules and that at least for today you choose to follow them. Evening deepens as you follow the path back toward the main hall, the sky above fading to a soft wash of indigo and rose. The first stars blink awake, and with them comes the gentle hush that always seems to settle over a samurai estate at day's end. You pause beneath the eaves of a small shrine, the scent of incense hanging faint and sweet in the cool air, and it's here in the quiet that you recall the old superstitions surrounding the top knot, the whispers that warned of misfortune should your knot be cut, whether by accident or by enemy hand. Historians still argue whether these beliefs stemmed from genuine spiritual fears or were born from the very real social consequences of losing the knot. Either way, the weight of the superstition lingers. To cut the knot was to sever more than hair. It was to break a warrior's identity, to strip away his honor. Some said it invited the attention of restless spirits or even the anger of ancestors watching from beyond. You trace the edge of your own knot fingers brushing the smooth loop of hair and feel that subtle connection to your duty, your clan, your lineage. It's easy to see how such beliefs took root. A samurai's knot wasn't just a style, it was a sacred bond, a thread that tied him to the past and the future all at once. There's a wry humor to it, of course. You can picture a samurai waking in the night, panicked at the thought of a loose knot, fumbling for comb and oil by candlelight to set things right before dawn. or the exaggerated tales of unlucky warriors who claim their misfortunes began the moment a hair slipped free. Whether those stories are true or simply cautionary, historians still debate, but they make for fine fireside gossip. As you turn from the shrine, the night breeze lifts your robes and stirs your hair, but the knot holds firm. You walk on reassured by its presence, comforted by the small, steady weight of tradition resting at the crown of your head. You follow a narrow, lantern-lit path that winds behind the main hall, where the ground is soft with fallen needles from ancient pines. The quiet is deep, now broken only by the occasional chirp of a night insect, or the soft clink of a guard adjusting his armor at the estate's edge. Ahead, the path leads to a small, unassuming building, home to the barber trusted by none other than the shogun himself. It's said that in all of Edo, no hands were more valued nor more feared than those of the shogun's barber. To this man fell the task of tending not only to the ruler's topknot, but to his dignity, his public image, and by extension, the image of the nation. One slip of the blade, one crooked loop of hair, and disgrace or worse might follow. Historians still argue whether these elite barbers were seen as mere servants or as silent advisors, their proximity to power giving them influence beyond their station. You step lightly, imagining the scenes that must have unfolded here, the barber's fingers steady as stone as he combed, oiled, shaved, and tied, the shogun silent watching with the gaze of a man who trusts no one fully. You think of the talismans the barber might have kept hidden in his sleeve, charms for steady hands perhaps, or prayers for the safe keeping of secrets. The room within is lit by a single paper lantern. You picture the tools laid out with the precision of a general's battle plan, the comb, the razor, the cloths of fine silk, the pot of camellia oil so pure it shines like water, and there is perhaps a small, almost invisible bowl of water to rinse the blade, a reminder that even here ritual and practicality go hand in hand. There is humor to be found in the tension if you think about it, a ruler of vast domains, armies, at his command, yet wholly dependent on the quiet skill of a barber with a comb and a pot of oil. You imagine the barber's apprentices tiptoeing around terrified to drop a comb or sneeze at the wrong moment. A modern hairstylist might envy or dread such responsibility. As you turn to leave the building's shadow, the lantern flickers in the night breeze, casting strange shifting shapes along the path. You feel the weight of your own topknot secure and steady, and give thanks for the unseen hands past and present that help keep it so. The night air carries the scent of pine smoke and damp earth as you walk toward the armory again, the moon casting a silver glow across the courtyard. Tonight you prepare for a different kind of ritual, the donning of armor, not for ceremony or training, but for battle. Your fingers check the familiar loop of your topknot once more. As if drawing strength from its presence, it holds firm slick with oil, and set just so a quiet promise of order amid the chaos to come. The process of preparing for war is as deliberate as it is weighty. You slide on the layers, the undergarments, the plates of the cuirass, the guards for shoulders, arms, and thighs, but all the while it's the kabuto, the helmet that makes you pause, forces you to think of your knot. You lower it slowly over your head, adjusting and shifting, feeling the space where the shaved crown rests easy, where the loop of hair fits snugly without being crushed. Historians still argue whether the topknot's design truly offered practical advantage in battle, or whether it persisted simply as a symbol too sacred to discard. What is beyond debate is that the knot went to war with the man, a part of his identity, even beneath layers of steel and leather. To lose it in combat, to feel that familiar loop torn or cut, was said to be as bitter as any wound. The weight of your helmet settles at last, the knot resting as it should, and you step out beneath the moonlight where your comrades gather. The soft creak of armor, the shuffle of sandals on dirt, the low murmur of final words shared between friends, and you think with the flicker of humor of the old saying, a samurai may fall in battle, but his topknot must stand. A bit of bravado perhaps, but it speaks to the heart of the matter. Even here on the edge of life and death, the knot matters. You glance at the others, their helmets aligned, their knots hidden but present. There's a unity in it, an unspoken bond. Together you will march, together you will fight, and through it all the top knot endures a quiet emblem of all you are sworn to protect. Dawn breaks slow and pale over the battlefield, the mist curling low over the churned earth. You stand among the scattered remnants of combat, splintered banners, a broken spear, half buried in the mud, and here and there the silent forms of those who fell. The air smells of damp grass, sweat, and steel gone cold. Your own armor feels heavier now, the weight of the night's effort pressing into your shoulders. But beneath the kabuto, you sense it, the top knot still intact, still marking you as samurai, even in the aftermath of chaos. As you move through the field, you hear the low murmur of voices, the soft clatter of armor as survivors regroup, and then quieter still, a rumor that sends a ripple of unease through the gathered men, hair thieves. Yes, strange as it sounds, there were those who prowled the edges of battlefields, not for swords or coin, but for the prized top knots of fallen warriors cut clean and sold as trophies, charms, or curiosities in the shadowy markets of the cities. Whether these thieves were outcasts, opportunists, or agents of rival clans, historians still argue, but the stories endure. You crouch beside a fallen comrade, noting with a small pang of relief that his knot remains untouched, his honor preserved even in death. There's a fierce protectiveness in you now, not just for the men beside you, but for this simple loop of hair that means so much. The thought of it stolen, displayed, or sold like a trinket feels as bitter as any defeat. It's almost absurd, isn't it, to fight for land, for lord, for family, and then to worry about hair. And yet the knot is more than hair. It's a man's name, his vow, his pride, bound tight with oil and care. You picture these thieves in the night creeping like ghosts snipping at the fallen, and the image is both grim and faintly ridiculous, like jackals fighting over scraps while the lions still stand. You rise, adjusting your helmet, feeling the secure loop beneath. Let them come, these hair thieves. Your knot will not fall so easily. The battle may be done, but the top knot, your top knot, remains. The sun hangs low now, casting long amber streaks across the worn road as you make your way toward the city gates. Dust rises with each footstep clinging to your robes, and yet your thoughts are not on the grit beneath your sandals or the ache in your legs. They're on what waits beyond the order delivered by imperial edict, that all samurai cut their top knots. The Meiji Restoration has begun reshaping Japan, and with it comes the end of a tradition that once bound warriors to their honor as surely as steel bound them to the battlefield. You pause at the edge of a bridge, gazing down at the river's slow, steady flow. The water reflects the changing world, the flicker of new banners rising over old rooftops, and your hand rises unbidden to the loop of your top knot, the knot that has seen you through duels, ceremonies, battles, and quiet nights beneath star-swept skies, the knot that now by law must fall. Historians still argue whether these orders were met with universal grief or quiet acceptance. Some samurai complied, seeking to embrace the new age. Others resisted, clinging to their knots as symbols of a fading world. You've heard the stories of men who wept as their knots were cut, of barbers who hesitated, blade trembling before carrying out their duty, of warriors who hid in remote provinces, refusing the shears, living ghosts of an older time. You think of what it would feel like, the cool slide of the blade, the weight of the loop falling into waiting hands, the lightness on your crown where once there was duty woven in oil and care. There's something almost comically tragic about it all. 1,000 battles survived, and in the end it is a barber's razor that claims the final mark of the samurai. The wind stirs the river's surface and you let your hand fall away from your knot. Not yet, you think. Not yet. For today at least the top knot endures even as the world changes around it. Evening shadows stretch across the temple grounds as you tread softly up the worn stone steps drawn by quiet curiosity to a place where the past is preserved not in scrolls or swords but in strands of hair. The temple's outer walls glow warm in the setting sun, and beyond them waits a small archive known only to a few, a place where relics of Topknots snipped and saved are kept in solemn reverence. You pass through the gate, the air cool and still, and find yourself in a dim chamber lined with wooden drawers and small lacquered boxes. The scent of cedar and old incense clings to everything. A monk appears, bowing deeply, his steps as soft as falling leaves. He gestures silently, inviting you to look closer at these quiet remnants of a bygone age. Historians still argue whether these preserved topknots were kept as tokens of honor, symbols of vows fulfilled, or simply as mementos for grieving families. Some were tied in silk and placed in family shrines. Others were offered at temples, prayers inscribed on slips of paper tucked alongside the strands. Each lock of hair represents a story, a warrior's promise, a son's tribute, a widow's memory. You feel the weight of those stories as you gaze upon the careful arrangements, the knots still looped as if waiting to be worn again. There's a strange, almost whimsical solemnity to it all. You picture a modern historian stumbling upon these relics and struggling to explain them. Yes, these are hair knots kept for centuries because they mattered. And they do. Even here, stripped of battle and ceremony, the top knot remains a symbol of the invisible threads that bind duty, honor, and memory. You bow low before leaving, a quiet gesture of respect for the guardians of these relics, and for the unseen hands that tied each knot so long ago. Outside, the night deepens and you walk on the weight of history resting lightly at the crown of your head. You leave the temple behind, the stillness of its ancient walls lingering with you as you make your way back toward the town's edge. The road winds past shops and inns, and at one corner you pause before the weathered screen of a painter's studio. Through the open door, you glimpse the familiar curve of a brush, the careful sweep of ink on silk. And there, taking shape beneath the artist's hand, is the image of a samurai, not his sword, not his armor, but his top knot rendered in delicate flowing lines. You step closer, drawn by the quiet power of the scene. The painter's subject is clear, the top knot perfectly looped, oiled to a soft gleam, the shaved crown beneath smooth as polished stone. It's a portrait of pride, discipline, and identity, all bound up in that simple arc of hair. You marvel at the care with which the artist works, the way each stroke captures not just the shape of the knot, but the spirit it represents. Historians still argue whether these depictions were meant as tributes to specific warriors or as idealized symbols of samurai virtue. Either way, they endure on scrolls, on screens, even in small carvings where the knot is as finely detailed as the face beneath it. You imagine a craftsman hunched over his work, squinting to get the loop just right, knowing that the top knot must be perfect if the figure is to be truly noble. There's a wry charm to the thought. Here you are in a world of blades and battles where a warrior's most lasting image might not be his sword raised in victory, but his hair tied just so. You think of future generations gazing at these artworks, wondering at the importance of a hairstyle, and yet sensing somehow the honor it carried. You linger for a moment longer, watching the painter's brush dance across the silk before turning back to the road. Your own knot feels a little firmer beneath your fingers, as if strengthened by the quiet tribute of art. The road leads you now to a small building tucked behind the market where the scent of oil and shaved wood drifts through the open doorway. Inside, an apprentice barber stands motionless, a young samurai seated before him. It is a moment of trial. This is the apprentice's first attempt at tying the top knot of a warrior, not his kin, not his friend, but a client who will judge him by the loop he creates. You step quietly into the room's shadowed edge unnoticed. As the apprentice lifts the comb with trembling fingers, his tools are arranged with care: a fresh pot of camellia oil, a razor sharp enough to shave a peach, and a cloth for wiping the blade. The young samurai, trying to hide his nervousness, stares straight ahead, his posture rigid with expectation. The knot that will emerge from this ritual will mark both their reputations, the wearers and the makers. Historians still argue whether these first tests were formal rites of passage or simple unspoken moments of apprenticeship completed, but the tension in the room tells you all you need to know. This matters. Every stroke of the comb, every twist of the oiled hair, every silent prayer that the knot will hold it all matters. The apprentice begins combing, carefully smoothing stray strands, oiling the hair until it glistens like wet stone. His lips move in a whisper, perhaps a mantra for steady hands, or perhaps simply counting the steps he's memorized so many times in practice. The room smells faintly of cedar and camellia, the scent of discipline. You can't help but feel a pang of sympathy as a single bead of sweat rolls down the boy's temple. You've been here in his place, hands shaken, heart pounding, the weight of expectation pressing down as heavily as any armor. And there's a quiet humor in it too. Two warriors, their futures balanced on a loop of hair, no wider than a finger. The knot is tied at last, the loop neat and firm, the oiled strands catching the light as the young samurai reaches up to touch it. He nods satisfied. The apprentice exhales the tension, leaving his shoulders, and you see the first glimmer of confidence in his eyes. Today he has passed the test. The apprentice's quiet triumph still lingers in your thoughts as you wander down a gentle slope toward the village outskirts. The sun hangs low now, casting everything in that soft golden light that makes the world feel almost dreamlike. It's here on this sleepy path lined with paper lanterns that you come upon a festival so small and unassuming, it could almost be missed, a local gathering honoring the ancient tradition of the Topknot. Children run barefoot through the grass, paper fans flapping their hair tied in miniature knots more playful than precise. Elders sit on woven mats beneath the trees, sipping tea, their topknots long since gone, but their memories sharp. And in the center of it all, a simple stage where dancers move slowly in a circle, their knots gleaming beneath the lantern light, each loop tied in a style from long ago. Historians still argue whether such festivals were once widespread or if they are a modern invention, small communities clinging to fading customs. But what's clear is that here in this moment, the spirit of the Topknot lives on, not as a martial symbol, but as a thread of continuity binding generations together. You pause beside the stall where an elderly woman sells small dolls, each with a tiny topknot tied in silk thread. She offers you one with a toothless grin, and you accept it, feeling the softness of the thread beneath your thumb, a quiet reminder that even the simplest tokens can carry great meaning. There's a gentle humor in it all. Imagine trying to explain to a stranger that this loop of hair, once the mark of warriors, is now celebrated with lanterns, tea, and tiny dolls. Yet isn't that the way of things? What was once grave becomes gentle. What was once fierce becomes fond. As you watch the dancers move their knots, swaying with each careful step, you feel a sense of peace settle over you, a sense that even as times change, some traditions find a way to linger soft as lantern light in the evening air. You leave the festival behind, the soft glow of its lanterns fading as you make your way along a narrow wooded path where the night breeze stirs the leaves and carries the faint scent of pine and tea. The road bends toward a small village known for its quiet eccentricities, and here you come upon a sight both rare and strangely stirring: women with topknots, their hair tied high in styles that echo those of the samurai. In this place, the boundary between warrior and woman was for a time blurred. Whether these knots were adopted during times of conflict, when women took up arms to defend their homes, or whether they served as silent tributes to absent husbands and fathers, historians still argue. But tonight, beneath the soft silver of the moon, the sight feels timeless. A small group of women walks together along the path, their knots neat and oiled, their robes plain but proud. They carry baskets, not swords, but their posture speaks of strength, of quiet resilience. One pauses to adjust her knot fingers quick and practice the loop, glinting briefly in the moonlight before being hidden beneath a straw hat. You catch her eye, and for a moment there is a shared understanding, a recognition of the discipline, the care, the meaning tied up in that simple arc of hair. There's a soft humor in it too. You imagine the startled expressions of visiting officials, unprepared to find women with knots as tidy and proud as any samurai's. Perhaps they exchanged knowing smiles behind their fans. Perhaps they muttered about propriety. Either way, the women's knots endured small acts of defiance woven into the fabric of daily life. As you continue on your way, the night deepens, the path quiet except for the soft rustle of robes and the whisper of the breeze through the trees. And with every step, the memory of those proud, silent knots lingers, a reminder that tradition, like honor, sometimes takes unexpected forms. The night softens now, and as we come to the end of this long and gentle walk through the world of the samurai Topknot, the rhythm of your breath slows, and your thoughts grow as still as the quiet dawn. The world outside fades to a hush, the sound of wind through pine, the distant call of an early bird, the soft rustle of leaves. The Topknot, so carefully tended, so full of meaning, rests now in memory, its weight light as a whisper at the crown of your head. Let the images blur, the oiled loops shining in lantern light, the soft scrape of a comb, the warm press of sun on your brow. You are safe, the day is done, and nothing more is needed now but rest. Drift deeper, carried gently by the quiet strength of all that has come before, and sleep well.